you would have to consult their documentation about how to create this link, and the software will automatically insert the relevant data from the record according to these particular templates that we allow you to insert into the full address, like you see here. Okay? One other major change is that we allow you to have both an English and a French version, so that if the particular service offers mapping systems in both languages, that it would use that language when viewing that kind of record. So if I'm viewing the French version of the record, it's going to do the French version of Google Maps, where the Google interface is in French, versus if I'm viewing an English record, it's going to present me with the English Google link. And does anyone need to see a demonstration of how that actually applies in the record? No? Okay. So then I'm assuming everyone has already seen this in their update form, where you have the ability to select one or more or none of these mapping systems and apply them to an individual record. Okay, next on our list is...
Reach the halfway mark, because we're going to have a break now.
Oh, yes, so we've had multiple requests in the past for breaks. So I will do a 10-minute break now if people want an opportunity to stretch their legs. And we will, it's 2:43 by my clock, and I will begin again at 2:53. So next on our list is a discussion of field display and field health. We'll start with field display. Field display defines the order in which fields will occur on forms and to a certain degree within your record details page. And it also allows you to name your fields or change the existing names. In the case of publication fields, like this one, you definitely want to come in and add a friendly name once you have said show on forms, which we saw earlier in the session. When I clicked show, allow these fields to be shown on display and forms, those fields were automatically added to my total available fields. And I can say this is the 2-in-1 description, and this is the, I want to update. And these are the 2-in-1 headings. And like we saw earlier with the checklist, these have the annoying feature of having to be updated individually, meaning I can't just make a bunch of changes and then hit update. Every single item has to be updated individually. That also means that you will want to be thoughtful about your display order in the same way we talked about with the checklist, so that you don't have to do massive reordering and reorganizing of a lot of these fields if you want to insert a new field between other existing fields. So that may mean clustering certain fields together and then allowing the software to do some sorting, or it may mean leaving nice, generous gaps between fields to allow you to insert fields between one another. The settings that you apply here do go across the entire database, and it's impossible to change those on a view-by-view basis. The one exception is that, for the miscellaneous tab, you can have a little bit of influence about how the fields are displayed within the record details page, because you have the ability to do field groups. Those banners that you see going across an individual record when you view the record details, I'll bring one up right now. These are display field groups. And because you can specify the order of these display field groups from within your view, the only thing that this field order does is sort within the field group, okay? So that is the only way that you have to override any of the order that you see here. So be aware that this field order has great influence over all the forms and the record display in every area of the database. Field groups are also not, these are not available to be changed in the volunteer software currently. So for the volunteer software, changing your field display would apply everywhere. Note that there are certain fields marked with an asterisk. That is because these particular fields may apply or have some influence over the way that records are used or displayed in both modules of the software. This only applies to the community information side because there are no volunteer software fields shared with the community information side, but certain parts of the community information record are used in various areas of the volunteer database because all volunteer opportunity records are tied to particular community information records, as well as the volunteer membership area may also be tied to certain community information records. So do be aware when you make changes that it may have an influence over other areas in the software. The required field does not actually force anyone to fill that information out. It simply puts one of these red asterisks beside the field whenever you are doing an update or a feedback for a particular record. So I'll go into one of these records. And you'll notice that a number of these records have the red asterisk telling me that this is a required field that I should fill out. However, I will never be blocked from submitting changes to the record simply on the basis that this is a required field. It is only a flag to highlight to the person that is filling out the information that they need to fill it out. The software does not actually enforce that that information be completed. And just like everything else with the field display setup, the required setting does apply across the entire database in every view. And this required should be viewed as a display setting and not a true requirement. It will simply display the fact that this is a required field. It will not actually require the field. There is one interesting exception to the required setting, and that is in the volunteer software. There are a number of fields that are Boolean fields, meaning yes or no fields. And if you change the field display of these yes or no fields to say they are not required, then they will become required, not, they will become yes, no, unknown instead of just yes or no. This can actually cause problems with the non-public field. Do not remove the required designation on the non-public field because the underlying database cannot support an unknown value for non-public. But for the remaining volunteer fields, I'll give police check is one example here, police check. You'll see that it says not required. That means on the form it would say required, not required, unknown. If I made this field required, it would not allow you to have an unknown value for that field. When you viewed the form, it would stop saying required, not required, unknown, and it would simply say required, not required. Okay? And the same would hold true for, there are a few other fields that apply in the volunteer database where it's a choice of yes and no, or yes, no, unknown, such as OSSD. Where it could be yes, no, unknown, and you could, if you say it's required, then it would have to either be yes or no, and it would remove that unknown option. So please be really cautious with those particular fields and making them required. Are there any questions about the field display? As I noted earlier, this is where you change the names of all extra fields, and in particular in the community information side, with the special extra fields that control the extra drop-downs. that whatever you name these extra drop-downs here also influences what they are called on forms such as advanced search. So if I scroll down to where it says extra checklist here, if I say that this isn't extra checklist anymore, this is bus routes, and I reload on my advanced search form, see now it says bus routes. And just to distinguish between what you would be using these extra checklists and drop-downs for, the extra drop-downs allow you to choose a single value per record, whereas the checklists allow you to choose multiple values per record. So in the example that I just used of bus routes, within your extra checklist setup, you could put all the bus routes that serve your community, and when you were filling out the record, you would simply have to check off the bus routes that apply to that particular record, just as an example. And then if someone was searching, if you wanted to search for services that were on a particular bus route, you'd simply be able to select those from the list and bring up all the records that were in the catchment area of that particular route. Okay, any questions about any of that? All right. Next on our list is the field help. Similarly to our publications and general headings, you do have the ability to list a full set of the field help in a new report in a new window where it will display the name, the display name, and if there is any help, it will print out the help. Be aware that the field help is under your control. And although we have distributed a certain amount of help, particularly in the volunteer software, for those who have asked, where we took help provided by Volunteer Kingston and made it general so that it would equally apply to any of our members, and we distributed that field help to those who requested. We have provided some field help that I believe originated in Halton to certain of our community information members. That field help is under your control and needs to be reviewed and updated by you. And in particular, the community information field help was never reviewed or properly updated to any kind of reasonable standard, as was done with the volunteer field help, where we had a particular project that involved me specifically finding a reasonable set of field help, modifying it, and distributing it. We've never had that kind of exercise with the community information field help, and part of that is because a lot of our members have taken the effort to do their own customized field help. I certainly would be highly supportive of an effort to produce some standardized field help that particularly took into account recent changes to the standards for a number of the fields that we use in CIOC that are based on Inform Ontario standards, and make those available, especially to those who don't have field help that they have reviewed and customized locally for their local needs. So if you don't have any field help, or you have whatever pathetic field help might have been donated to you based on 5-year-old Halton field help, and you would really like to see an effort to do an update of that field help, please make that known, because it's only through the initiative of our members telling us that they need and want that kind of assistance and service, and that that's something that they want from CIOC, that we decide to make that one of the projects that we work on behalf of the membership. If you decide that you're just going to go in and edit your own field help, it's quite simple. You can do up to 8,000 characters per field. If you want to put in any formatting, such as line breaks, bolding, headings, and so on, you do need to use HTML. This is an HTML field. If you're just writing a single paragraph of text, it's not going to hurt that you don't have any HTML skills. You can simply type the paragraph and it will display fine. When you do fill out field help, you will see it based on this question mark beside each of the fields in either the community information of the volunteer software. I'm going to go into the volunteer software because I do have some volunteer field help. And I don't have any community information field help. And when you click on that particular field, it will pop up a window printing out whatever field help you had specified. And that would appear both on the update form and the feedback form. And do note that the same set of field help applies across the entire database. So there's one set of field help for volunteer and one set for community information, and that applies to every view in the database. You do have to share your field help between staff and the public, so it's important that whatever you write captures the needs of both of those sets of users. You shouldn't include information that would be confusing to the public, and you need to make sure that you include enough information about your standards and quality checks for that field that a staff member who wants a reference can get the information out of the field help that you provide. There is page help about field help, just as anything else in the database, and I'm going to take a moment here now to remind you that there is substantial page help in the software, and I'm currently doing quite a significant update to the page help to go along with the latest software upgrade. You already have received part of those page help updates. Please do use the page help as a reference. It's the dump of my brain about every page that I have had a chance to make notes about. So it includes pretty much everything I cover in these trainings and sometimes even more. One example of the even more, I realized while reviewing the page help on advanced search that one of the things I didn't cover when I did the basic session that covered searching was I didn't talk about forms of oh, pardon me, I'm being told to, I have to share. Here we go. Page help. One of the things that I didn't cover at that training, but which is part of the page help, is a really, really useful tool, and that is the ability to search forms of words within the Boolean searching option. So for instance, it would allow you to say, I want to search forms of the word happy, and it would match terms like cheerful and glad and pleasant, and anything that might be an equivalent term for the word happy. Or I can search different tenses of a word. So that in this case, forms of run would search run, runs, ran, running, all of those different forms of the word. So please do access the page help. It is extremely detailed. It's not there for every single page in the software, but it is there for a good deal of the software, and it is extremely detailed, and we do try and keep it up to date at least a couple of times a year. I've been doing a thorough review of the information that's already there, and slowly but surely we are getting complete coverage of all of the pages in the software. So we're not there yet, but it's at least 80% of the software has very thorough, detailed page help available. So please use it. It's there for you. A great deal of effort has been put into making accurate and detailed help available. So please make use of it. Anyway, back off my soapbox and back to what I was talking about, which is doing field help. Again, it's customized by you. This is not something that's ever included in software updates because it is a localized update. It is up to you to make sure that you have field help available that is reflective of your local needs and is kept up to date. That's it for field help, unless anyone has any questions about either the field display or field help. Okay. So next in our parade of setup is the download page. Although it's called the download page, that's extremely, extremely misleading because what the download page actually does is allow you to create a list of links of resources that are available to the super users in your database. And again, this page is only available to the super users in your database, so it's not appropriately used for wanting to post general links to other users in your database. The primary purpose of this download page is for us to have a place to place links for you to go and fetch the access download of your database. And those particular links we have automatically put into your database for you, although if you went in and changed them, that would be sort of your prerogative and your problem if you did that. But we certainly have made the effort to make sure that every database has appropriate links for both community information and volunteer records and statistics. And currently on CIOC servers, those are two different files. Those files are password-protected zip files. So although anyone could potentially download it that had the link, the password that opens the zip file is only given to the main contact for that database. And if any other users of the database want to access this particular file, they would have to get the password from the main contact for the database. Chris and I can't give that password out to other people in the database. We have to have a primary contact for each database, and we only distribute the password to that primary contact. Again, although its purpose is for putting download links, there is nothing preventing you from putting absolutely anything you want in as a download, quote, a download link. It's simply a web address with a name. Okay? So you would see a list of resources that are just links with names, and you also have the capability of deleting any of those. So that could include a lot more than just your download file. If you want to have other useful links there, it's whatever you want to put on your download page. Any questions about the download page? In the long run, I think we need to rename it something a bit more useful than the download page. Okay. Next is statistics. So the statistics menu, the same set of statistics are available for both the community information and volunteer software. From the statistics menu, you have access to the statistics search form, the top 50 records, the total record use by agency, the data management and other and access auto reports, and the ability to delete old record view statistics in your database. So I'll start with the statistical report form. This allows you to identify statistics that meet record view statistics that meet specific criteria. The user's IP address, users of a particular type, accesses from a particular view, and keeping in mind, whenever you are analyzing these record view statistics, is that we don't double count accesses of the same record where you temporarily change your view. So if I am working in the data management view and I switch from within the record, go back to the record here to show you what I'm talking about, and I switch temporarily within the record to a different view, like this, that is not counted as a separate view, okay? Only the initial access to that view would be counted. Any subsequent accesses at the same time with this use vol temp would not be counted as a record view. So if I, whenever I do use vol view temp or use CIC view temp, where I temporarily change my view to something else, whenever I do that, that is not counted in the record views. So be aware of that when you do your statistical analysis. Let's say I do a search for CIC public view, that it's not going to count any of the times that my staff did a temporary switch to the public view in order to print out a record. That wouldn't be part of your statistics. Besides the view, you can also specify a date range. So the default buttons allow you to do the previous month's worth of statistics. And you can limit it to records owned by a particular agency. And you can specify whether it's viewed by anyone, only staff, or logged-in users, or only public. You can also specify whether you want it to be in a print version. And again, the print version would use the print template if it was available, and it automatically blocks all of your menu and so on, and all of these links to make a cleaner report. So there's a version of the print version of the report. That's the statistical form report. Total record use is often a giant report of the use of every single record in your database. It's going to be done in alphabetical order and include every record, even if that record was never used. So if you have a very large number of records in your database, this report can be extremely substantial and take a long time to print out because it has to do the statistical analysis for every single record in your database. At the bottom of the list, it will do a summation of all of the public and total record views in the report. And again, this is not on a per view basis. This is against all views in your database. If you want to do it on a per view basis, you have to use the form on the main stats page to limit by particular view. And that if you did that, it would not include records that had not been used. It would not include zero count records, whereas the total record use report does include zero count records. The top 50 records is just what it sounds like. It's the 50 most frequently used records in your database based on total usage, not public usage. And it is possible, as you see here, to have multiple records ranked at the same level. So I have 4 different records that are all ranked at 12 because they all have exactly the same usage count. What that means is that you may only have it go to 21 because it's only going to bring up 50 records, or in this case, let's say that this one was the 50th record, Acton Food Share, it would still bring up the next, all of the other records that ranked at level 21 because they're equal. So it's going to bring up at least 50 records if you have at least 50 records in your database, but it's possible that it could bring up a little bit more than 50 records if there is a tie for 50th place. And also the count, the rank, won't necessarily go up to 50 because there will often be ties where you have more than one record with the same record count. Use by agency is a short summation report of the usage broken down by who owns the record. Again, this is over all time and all views. It's not broken down in any way. The data management and other auto reports give you perspective based on different kinds of activity in the database. The data management report is only useful for a few months back, and that is because records change so often that the older this report is, the less accurate it is. It tells you how many records you've created, modified, done a full update on, or deleted within the given time frame. The reason why this report gets so rapidly out of date is, let's say I modified a record in September. If I modified it again in October, it would become part of the October count rather than part of the September count. So be aware that the time when that report is most accurate is when that month has just completed. So if I do a report on November the 1st, October's data management report is as accurate as it will ever be, because at the beginning of November 1st, I haven't made any modifications that are likely to make the October report inaccurate in any way, because I wouldn't have had time to do that. But the farther I get into the month of November, the less and less accurate the October report gets. And that is why you only have access to the current month, the previous month, and 2 months prior. Because any farther back than that, and the report is really so inaccurate that it's no longer helpful. If you want to be tracking these kinds of statistics over time, I do encourage you to go in on the 1st of the month and gather the numbers for the previous month. That is the best way to get the most accurate statistics. Record views by record owner. This is a breakdown similar to what we saw in use by agency, except unlike use by agency, it's going to break it down over time. The problem with use by agency is it doesn't give you a sense of how that information changes over time, because it does encompass all statistics that are in your database from all time, whatever you have in your database. Record views, and again, that only shows 3 months. Okay? All of these auto reports you will find only show the current month, the previous month, and the month prior. Views by view, similar report. How many views you had by view, both for logged in, public, and total. Okay? And that's broken down by the 3 different months. Number of unique IPs. This will give you a general sense of the unique visitors that you had to your site. It is broken down by record owner, and again by month. The unique IP addresses should not view that as 100% accurate about unique visitors, because it's both possible for more than one user to come from the same IP, but also for one user to come from more than one IP. However, overall, you'll find that this balances out to give you a relatively good sense of the number of unique visitors that you have overall. We have a similar IP report, only broken down by view rather than by record owner. And finally, we have the total unique IPs that isn't broken down by any of either the record owner or the view, but is the total. Does anyone have any questions about the auto report? Okay. Finally, we have the ability to delete old statistics. We have had cases in the past on our old servers where there were space considerations that did prompt us to ask our members to remove very old statistics. Where possible, we do leave it to the discretion of members to clean up their old statistics at their leisure. You are required to keep a minimum of 6 months of statistics in your database, because that is used to calculate your membership fees. If you do not keep at least 6 months of statistics in your database and you don't have a particular exception prearranged with CIOC for not having 6 months worth of statistics in your database, you could be charged the maximum amount, because we can't accurately determine what your statistics are. So it is really important to make sure that you never delete more than 6 months worth of statistics in your database. Now, why would you want to delete them at all? A few reasons. Some of the reports that you've seen didn't have any cutoff. So take the top 50 records. So let's say that I have been keeping my records since 2002, and the top 50 records in 2002 may have been extremely different than what they are today. If I'm keeping all of the records in my database, I'm not getting a very accurate sense of what the current trends in use are in my database, because I have the clutter of all of those older years of statistics. And the same can be said for total record use and so on. But also, there are consequences involved with deleting related information, like if you want to delete records in your database that are no longer in use. If those are associated with your statistics, if you don't delete those in a similar time frame, then their dependency on one another can cause a problem. So if I'm not deleting the statistics, but I deleted the record that is associated with that statistic, then I can no longer retrieve the information about that record when I go to analyze those statistics. If I decide that I'm going to purge my old deleted records once a year, and I time my deletion of the statistics to happen at the same time, then I'm able to get very accurate ongoing snapshots of the statistics that where all of the records that are part of that statistical snapshot are still available. So that's another reason why you would want to clean up When you delete old statistics, it deletes up to and including, meaning if I delete April 2007, it's going to delete everything that occurred prior to April 2007. Okay, so you'll see that this goes in reverse order, meaning that if I delete from the top, it's going to delete the fewest number of statistics, and if I delete from the bottom, it's going to delete the most number of statistics. The number to delete represents the total number, so November 2008, 854 is the number of statistics for October, November, August, etc., all added up together would form the count for leading to November 2008. Okay. Are there any other questions about statistics? There is a statistical report that we can do as one of the bulk record operations, and I'll briefly discuss that when we get to the bulk record operations. But other than that, that's everything to do with statistics. I'll also hopefully have time to show you your weblog, which is a completely different kind of statistic. Okay, next on our list is import and export. I'm not going to go into tremendous detail about import and export, but I do want to make people generally aware of what the import-export tool is and how it works, so that because I do believe that it will have an impact on your effective data sharing with one another. So we'll start in the obvious place with exporting. There are two ways to export. One is just by clicking the export menu from the main menu, and that would allow you to select all your records or to select either distributions or publications that you want to include in your export. There are three main types of export. One is the basic XML export, which is used with the access tool that we make available to our members to bring all of your records into a single access table for use for various offline activities. Second, we have the Eddie-based export, which is intended to be imported into Eddie-based software. And finally, we have the sharing format, which is used with the import tool to share records between CIOC databases. You'll note with the first format that you do have to specify between English and French if you do use both English and French in your database. And we also have two sections here because we have recently updated the basic XML format that is output by the software. And we continue to include this older format. You'll see the little note here saying the options below will allow you to export in the former XML export format. This format will be going away. So as soon as you are capable, please stop using the old XML format, because eventually, sometime soon, you will not have it as an option anymore. We are currently in a transition phase to give everyone enough time to update any offline tools that they might have that use this information, whether that be mailing labels or printed reports or data files that they share with external agencies. We want to give you an opportunity to have time to start using the new format and accommodate all your tools and notify your partners before we get rid of this old format. One of the most significant changes in the format is that the address is in the same format as is used in CIOC, meaning there is a street address and a mailing address, as opposed to the old format, which had a site, a mailing address, or an address and a site address, which was different. So the default address was stored in the same as the mailing address, and you put a separate street address if it was different from the mailing address. So that was opposite to what is used in CIOC and what is used by 99.9% of the world. So the new format uses the same type of format that you see in CIOC, which is there is an address, and if the mailing address is different, then it uses a different mailing address. And there are some other minor changes as well. This is the same set of data that would be included in the XML export table in your download for the community information members. So you don't need to export unless you need either a subset of your data, or you don't have access to your download, or you need it immediately up to date at this very second. Those are the reasons why you might want to export it. But in general, you should be able to access this information just using your download, if that is the way that you want to do it. So it's not a problem to make export files, and indeed you can make them at any time, although do be sensitive that it is work for the database, and don't make a bunch of export files for no particular reason. But you certainly don't have to ask permission or give notification or anything like that to create an export. You can make them at any time. So I'm going to create a sharing format export. I would choose an export profile. An export profile configures which fields you will be sharing and also potentially which distribution and publication codes. And then you can specify a particular publication or distribution to say which record you want to share. I'm going to use the M record. Yes, exports do take some time. Okay. When your export is complete, it will give you a link to capture that file. If you don't get it at this time, if you have to run it again, it's going to make a brand new file. But the file does stay on the server for a short period of time, so usually until overnight, and then the export files are cleaned up off the server. So I would right-click and do Save Link As.
24 hours.
And now that file is available to me to use for an import. I'll briefly go to the setup of export profiles, just so we can get a sense of how you do that setup. So I use Define Help Export. An export profile has a name. As of the current software upgrade, you have the ability to specify the name of the source database, where it is located, and also alternatively the name of the French database and where it is located. You can leave any of these values blank, but if you include them, then the person importing at the other end has the ability to see when they bring up that record a link to your database. So if they choose to use the source database field within their record, that they would automatically see where that record came from and have a link to that record. As of the latest software upgrade, you also have the ability to provide a feedback link for every single record that you export and which view you want them to submit feedback to. So any public views in your database will be listed, and if you have multiple website addresses, so take the case of Central East has centraleastontario.cioc.ca, but also forinfo.cioc.ca, and several others. Those would all appear in this list, and they could choose whatever address they wanted the target database to submit feedback to. And what would happen is within the information that you were sharing to the other database would be a direct link to the feedback form in the specified view, so that if someone was reviewing that information, they would just be able to click on that link and go immediately to the feedback form on your site. The main reason that this feature was added was so that those of you who are sharing into the 211 Ontario Provincial Database would be able to provide feedback links for all of the records that you were sharing, so that those records on 211ontario.ca will be able to link directly back to the feedback form on your site and provide feedback directly to you, rather than the feedback having to go through 211ontario.ca and be forwarded on to you and you having to process that into your database. This would allow them to directly link to your feedback form, so the feedback is directly into your database. So that's the main reason why it's there. But it's also useful, as I say, if you're sharing a record between CIOC databases, they can add that field to their record details and automatically have a link for this, if the staff member is reviewing the record and notices a problem, to click on it and automatically give feedback into the source database. To manage the fields that are part of the export profile is a simple matter of checking off the fields that you want to share, and then hit Submit. you can manage the particular distributions and publication codes that apply to this export profile. Be aware that the distributions and publications that you select have nothing to do with the actual records that you are distributing. So if I have under distributions, I want to distribute tests, that does not imply that I'm sharing only the records that are encoded with tests. It only means that within the distribution field that I'm sharing to the target database, I would include the test distribution code. So if a record was marked with test, it would appear within the list of distributions for that record in my sharing file. And the same holds true for publications. It doesn't imply just because I pick or do not pick publication codes here that that is the record that I'm sharing. I can share any record I want with this export profile, but the publication code field within the information I'm sharing would only have the particular codes that I include here. And in addition to the codes, you also decide whether or not you want to include descriptions and headings. So that 211 Ontario publication that I added, I had added a bunch of new headings. If I wanted to share just the code with my partners, then this is how I would send it. But if I want them to also be able to retrieve the heading information, I would want to update it to say, please also include the headings. And I could also include the description if I wanted to. Any questions about export profiles? Okay. So to the main menu again, we're going to go to the import area. There is a new feature in the import tool called the import queue, which those of you who are already familiar with the import tool will probably notice this is different. The way that an import works is you click Load New Dataset. You browse for the file on your computer. You can optionally give it a name. And here, this is perfect. Yay! I'm glad this says failed. When you load a file, an import file into your database, a large amount of the validation that takes place during the import process happens at the moment that you load the file. The software validates the import against something called a schema. The schema is a description of what kinds of information are allowed and how that information is structured. CIOC has an official schema for every release of the software that describes how the information must be formatted in order to be properly imported into the software. That schema is always available by going to your website address /import CIOC schema.xsd. It's a very disgusting, and I had to write this by hand, a very disgusting and detailed technical description of exactly what the information has to look like in order for the software to allow it to come into the database. So for example, take the comments field. I say that the comments field is allowed to be the type a bilingual text field of a maximum of 4,000 characters. It has to occur, it can be optionally left out, meaning you don't have to have comments, and it can occur a maximum of one time, meaning I can only have one set of comments for every record. And that kind of description goes on and on throughout the whole thing. And it is extremely detailed and has all of the same rules that would apply if you were updating a record in CIOC. It describes what email addresses have to look like, what website addresses have to look like, what record owners, the NUM field, which is the friendly record number field, and so on, even postal codes. And if a record that you're importing fails any of these tests, then that record cannot be imported. So in this case, there were probably, by the looks of it, 256 records total in this import file, but only 255 were successfully loaded. And the reason is that in this case, This particular record, OCR 0776, had an invalid website address. And the reason it's invalid is it has HTTP in front of it. And when you are entering website addresses in CIOC, you do not enter the HTTP. Now, how is it possible that we have records in CIOC that violate CIOC's rules? It's quite simple, actually. The main way that this occurs is when people initially convert into CIOC, they have records that are loaded in behind the scenes and not through the normal, obviously, update forms, because it's all done automatically as one big group. And those records may have certain bits of data that don't comply with the rules of CIOC. And this is one good example. You might have email addresses or postal codes that fail. If someone were to try and do this update from the update form, it would yell at them that this is not a valid website address. But it is certainly possible to get this kind of an error. What do you do if you get this error? You report back to the person who sent you the record. You say, record OCR 0776 has an invalid website address and it needs to be corrected. Until they correct that website address, this record will not import into CIOC. Okay, so it brought in the other 255 records, but it didn't bring in OCR 0776. All right, I'm going to close this window. I'm going to reload my import page, and now I have the file that I loaded, stuff that starts with M, November 17th. There are a total of 255 records to be updated. If there were any brand new records, I would see them under the add list. At any time, I can look at more information about that or delete the data set. The more information link is only fully accurate before you run the updates. The more information link is intended to give you information about the update before you run it. After you have completed it, the completed link gives you the post-update report. Okay, so that's where you get more information about what's happened after you update the records. In order to actually perform the update, I have three options. I can click Add or Update to individually add or update some or all of the records, or I can do Queue All, which will do both the adds and the updates in one go. It will add them to the queue. You can see I have one right now in the import queue, this one here that says Cancel Queue. And then at any time I can click Process Now, and it would run through any of the files in the queue. So for members such as Find Help, who are bringing in lots and lots and lots of your files, this will allow them to queue up all of those files at the end of the day, hit Process Now, and go home. The script will run for up to 12 hours and go one by one through each of the files until they're all complete. If at any time the import is interrupted, it will be completely resumable. So you really don't have to worry if you get a script timeout or some other problem that stops the import in the middle. You can resume that import and complete it at any time. Okay, so it's fully resumable, both through Add, Update, and Queue. When you go through the update process, you have the ability to view the data that's been sent to you. So it will show you all the records that, in this case, this is updated records, so I can actually see the existing records by clicking on them. It will tell you whether the record was bilingual, who owns it, and you can actually view the actual data in the XML file. Oh, goody. And there's a bug. Okay, there's a bug I have to fix. When you click on that, and we'll have it updated in any moment, it will show you the actual XML data for that particular record so that you can see the exact content that is being shared for that particular record. When you run the update, you have the opportunity to select from all of the record owners that are contained in the file. So if I only wanted to import the Ancaster records, I could just select Ancaster or Ancaster Flamborough Dundas. Would only import those record owners. In the case of an ownership conflict, meaning I have a record ANC 001 and have it owned by Ancaster, but the incoming file says ANC 001 is owned by Flamborough, you have to decide what to do if that happens. You can either keep your existing owner, Ancaster, You can update the owner to Flamborough, or you can just skip that record and it would remain unimported, so that when you went back to your import menu, it would remain in that update thing waiting to be dealt with, so that you would have the chance to review the information or try and figure out why the record owner had changed. Finally, you can decide how many records to import. Okay? Anywhere from 50 to all records. And we looked earlier at that source database information, so this allows you to specify whether you are going to accept the source database information that's contained in the file. So there's a question?
Fixed.
Oh, Chris fixed the boo-boo, so let's go view the data. No, you didn't. Oh, I have to update.
No, you should just, oh, you're running off looking with everything today.
Okay, well, we'll skip that. Chris updated his copy, but not mine. When you have completed an update, you will actually receive a report telling you whether there were any issues during the import and showing you the particular records that were imported. I'm going to go into another database. Which database am I going to go into? Hoping that someone has one with issues. I don't have any, obviously because I'm importing from my own database to my own database, I'm never going to have any issues. The types of things you would see in an import report as an issue are communities that didn't match, languages that didn't match. It's mainly to do with classification systems, checklists, and other items like that where the configuration can differ from one database to another. The thing to distinguish between the error report that we got when we loaded the file and the import report that we get here is the error report we saw when we loaded the file actually prevented that record from being imported. The issues that I might see in an import report do not affect the ability for the import to occur. So the import would have proceeded normally, and you would receive a warning that some information either had to be changed or was excluded. So in the case of a subject that you didn't have in your database, it would give you a warning saying it couldn't find that subject and it was not imported, because maybe it was a local subject in their database and it's not something that you have in your database. The same with the taxonomy. If they have a taxonomy term activated that you do not have activated, that it would be unable to import that taxonomy term because in your database that taxonomy term is inactive. In the case of communities, as we discussed earlier, if there was an issue where it couldn't find the local community that you had supplied and it used the authorized community instead, it would let you know that. And in the case of other checklists like languages, if it had a language that wasn't in your database, it would move that language to the general notes. So the information would still be there, it just would be in the notes instead of the checklist part. So you're not losing the information, it's just moving to a different part of the field, and you would receive a warning telling you that that had occurred. So although these warnings are important and important to review, they're not critical in the ways that the errors that you receive when loading the file are. Okay, are there any questions about importing or queuing or any of those things? One thing I will note is that we have made changes to the import system to allow you to run imports with less impact to your own database. We have to complete that process, which I'm sure we'll do sometime this week. But even though you can run these imports without completely locking down your database, we still recommend that you run these imports not at peak operating hours, because it will slow down your database and potentially other people's databases as well. So I would encourage you you can load the file at any time, but to not run the file until maybe when you're leaving for the day or in the evening if you're able to do that, because it will mean the least impact to other users that are using the database. Any import-export questions? Okay. And finally on our list are all of our bulk record operations. So I'm going to assume that everyone who's here either attended the CIOC Basics or already knows the CIOC Basics and understands how I got to have a checkbox next to all of my records. Bulk record operations are done using the Select Checkbox tool, which I got through my Change Display options. I select the individual records that I want to work with, and I can choose any one of a number of options from the Action dropdown. What you see in the Action dropdown is determined by your particular permissions. In my case, I'm a super user, and so I see all of the possible options. The first obvious one is the new results set, so that would allow you to pick a number of records and show only those records. This is really useful if you want to go record by record, like this, through your search results, and you only want to see particular records. It's also useful if you want to create a report for someone for printing and you only want to show them particular things. So say I have organization number and phone number, and I only want to show certain specific records that someone wants as their list. I can just pick the records that apply to them, do new result set, print version, and it's only going to show me those specific records that I chose. Other options we have available to us are print lists, which allows us to use one of our print profiles to print the selected records. And we'll go through that in detail in the print session that we have in December. We can generate a statistical report. So this will take the selected record and bring us to that statistical form that we saw earlier, where we can add additional criteria like the IP address, the user type, the view, and so on, and gather statistics on those particular records that we've chosen. Export records, as we said earlier, there's two ways to run both print and export. So you can do it from the main menu, selecting a distribution code, or you can export the records that you specifically choose using any one of those export tools that we saw earlier. So format, Eddy-Base Export, or any of those other, or the basic XML format. I can add and remove a number of different kinds of classifications, like distribution code, heading, NAICS, publication, subject, taxonomy. They all operate very, very similarly. So I'll go into add distribution code. I say whether I want to add or remove, and then I pick from the list and submit. When I'm doing NAICS code, I have to actually type in the code, and I can use the Finder tool to find that particular NAICS code that I want to enter, and then I can enter that in and add it. So I would just copy and paste the one I want to use and hit submit. Using the taxonomy term is similar in that you have to search for a particular taxonomy code that you want to use. And then copy in that code. One special setting that you'll see with the taxonomy add and remove applies to removing a term, so it would have to only apply when I was doing delete. If that term occurs within a set of linked terms, so let's say I had, I don't know what would link thrift shops. Thrift shops and youth, for some reason it was a youth-oriented thrift shop. If I'm removing the term thrift shop and it's linked with youth, I have to decide what should I do. Should I remove the term from the linked set, which would mean I would be leaving youth sitting all by itself without a link to thrift shop, or I can remove the term, I can remove the entire set, meaning that I'm going to take out both thrift shop and youth. So anything that contains the word thrift shop, the entire link would come. Or I can say, leave it alone. If it's in a link, don't take it out. All right, so those are my options when I'm adding and removing a taxonomy term. And subject term works just like, and publication code and heading all work just like distribution code, in that you select from a drop-down list and either add or remove. When I'm actually going to do an add remove distribution code, so you can see what the report looks like. It will tell you how many records it added the item to. This may not be the same as the number of records that you initially selected, because it's possible that some of those records either already had it or didn't have it, depending on whether you're adding or removing. You should receive a link back to return to your previous search results. This is your exact previous search result. It's not re-executing your prior search. So if I had done a search for the distribution code test and I'd removed the distribution code test from some of those records, it would not bring me back to a new search for the distribution code test. It would bring me back to my original list of records. So you can see there's far more than 6 records here, even though in my report it says it was added to 6 records. In some reports that we'll see, it will show you a link to just your altered records. This is the case in the Find and Replace report. You have the option to either go to your previous search results or just the records that were modified. Next, we have the ability to email an update request. We went through an email update request process when we did our data management activities. So this just allows you to select specific records that you want to send an email update request to, and it brings you to the form to customize your email update request to those records. Set records public, non-public. I can pick particular records that I want to either set to be public or non-public. Couldn't be easier. Done. And those 2 records are now non-public. Sorry, there's a question.
There's a question. Is it possible to add or, I don't even understand this question. Is it possible to add or remove a bunch of French views? Is that a French translation of a record?
So do you mean like adding and removing the equivalent of a record?
Yeah.
No, that can't be done by bulk, because you have to individually go into the form to view and modify the update form whenever you create an equivalent. So that's not something you can do in bulk. That wouldn't be a tool that we could have a tool to remove the French equivalent, but never add, because in order to add, you actually have to go through the full update process.
I think it's driven by the fact that some people create a whole bunch of equivalents without actually translating them. I've heard this practice happening.
But at the moment, there's no way to either add or remove a French equivalent in bulk. You have to do it on a record-by-record basis.
Bulk emails. Is there a way to allow a user to do a bulk email without that person being a super user or agency admin?
Yes. Well, yes and no. The ability to do bulk emails is constrained to super users and agency admins. The ability to do individual emails is set in the user type, if I'm recalling correctly. Okay, I'll move on if that's all the questions. So changing record owner, you can select a set of records and pick from a list of all of the record owners in your database that have been designated as owning that particular type of record, be it volunteer or community information, and change them all to be owned by that particular record owner. Finally, we have... So there's a question, will it change the num? No, it won't. It only changes the record owner field. It leaves the record number field intact.
And is there a bulk way to change the record
There is no bulk way to change the record owner field. Or the num field. The num field is calculated, it's either entered in manually, or the system can calculate the lowest available unused record number on an agency-by-agency basis. But it's not possible to do this in a bulk way, where you would bulk renumber a number of records. There's no facility to do that at the moment, at least. So when you change the record owner, it will leave the previous record number intact, and you would have to manually go into the record to change the record number. Okay, next, deleting and restoring records. Again, very simple. You either can set a deletion date for the record, or if the records are already deleted, you can restore those records and remove the deletion date. If you set a deletion date, you can specify for today, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 18 months from now. And if it's not already a non-public record, it will by default automatically be setting that record non-public as well. Okay, last in our list is our find and replace utility. So handy dandy, I have a bunch of records with very similar things in their org level 1, and I'm going to use those to do my find and replace. Find and replace utility. There are 5 different find and replace tools, and they all do different things. So the main find and replace tool will replace anything that is contained in the base table. So that would be either the global base table or the CIC base table. For those of you who have access to your downloading, you can actually see the underlying tables in the system. That would be any field that occurs exactly once in a record, and that could include certain fields that have multiple components, like the contact, which has contact name, phone, title, and so on. Where it occurs exactly once in every record, the chances are very good that there is that is part of the base table and would be part of the basic find and replace tool. Things that wouldn't be part of the find and replace tool are anything that could occur more than one time per record, or is optional in the record. That would include alternate names, former names, checklists that are selected for a record, and all of those other things like publication codes, taxonomy terms, subjects, where we have other tools to handle those. The reason that we have all of these other tools is to assist you in dealing with those other kinds of fields and other kinds of operations. The prepend append tool also operates on the base table, but allows you to add a particular set of text to the beginning of any existing information in the field. The clear field tool erases the existing information in the tool. The checklist tool is a tool to add or remove a number of checklist items to a group of records at once. So if you hadn't previously been tracking the language English, but the provincial data standards are saying that you need to be explicit about the records serving English, and you want to add the language English to all of your records at once, or all of the applicable records at once, you select all those records, use the checklist tool to add the language English to all of those records at the same time. And finally, the name tool allows you to do search and replace in alternate and former names. We'll start with the find and replace tool. You select the particular fields within the global base table or CIC base table that you want to do your find and replace operation in. Note that fields that are English only will not be listed when you do this search in French. And also note that these are table field names, so they don't translate in French. They will look the same whether you're in French or English. It will still say accessibility notes even when you're doing find and replace in the French version of the software, because it's the actual name of the database field, not anything that can be translated. Optionally, you can look in publication descriptions. I don't have any within the records that I had selected, so there's nothing to replace. And you can look at the general checklist notes. The general checklist notes are part of the base tables, and you can search across, you can search the checklist notes, meaning not the part where I say English, but the part where I say English or French, but only on Mondays. So the only on Mondays part, I can do a find and replace in, right? And again, the checklist notes are part of the base table. So you see accessibility notes, language notes, those would all be part of the fee notes, funding notes. Those are all part of the base table, so you can do search and replace in those. And you can look in the checklist notes, which are the notes attached to a particular checklist item.
So we have a question about what's the difference between the global base table and the CIC base table.
So the global base table contains all the fields that are part of an organization or program record, which are also useful in the volunteer software. And the CIC base table fields are those fields that only apply to the community information module. That doesn't mean that the volunteer software can change the global base table fields, but only that when the volunteer software is accessing information about the community information organization or program, that is the information that they have access to. Okay, the options that you have when find and replace is you can look for a particular set of text, which can optionally, you can specify whether you want to match case or the whole field and ignore white space. So with two spaces cat, if I say ignore white space, then it would match the cat with one space, or the cat with two spaces, or the cat with three spaces. And then replace with text is whatever you want to replace it with. You can erase text by saying, I can say the cat and then replace with nothing, and it would erase the text, the cat. But I can't say look for nothing and replace it with something. If you want to do that, then you use the prepend or append tool, where you can tack on text at the beginning or end of the tool. And if you want to actually erase the entire contents of the field, then you should be using the clear field tool. The report that you get, I want to go back and just look at what I'm going to replace here. Replace daycare. Okay. So I'm going to look in org level 1. I'll look in org level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I can't remember which it was in. I'm going to look for the text daycare. I'm going to say I don't care about the case because I know it actually had a capital B, and I want to replace daycare with childcare. Why is it saying 0 records were altered? Okay, well, I'm going to have to look into that. Beats me. I want to be able to give you a report, but it seems I fixed some bugs in the French side of the find and replace, and I have this sinking feeling that it's introduced a problem in the English side.
Suggestion to remove check mark on the match case.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It was supposed to be not match case. That's right. Thank you. At least you're more observant than me. So it would show the particular record where it had found a match and replaced it, and which fields it matched. If you are searching in multiple fields, it will list every single field where it found an occurrence and replaced it. And as I discussed earlier, you have the ability to either go to the previous search results, the original list of records that you wanted to find and replace in, and the list of records that were actually altered. So I could have, those are 3 potentially different sets of values. Your original search results are the place where you check the records off. Your original list of records for find and place were the records you actually checked off. And the list of altered records were the records where it found something to replace and actually did make a change to the record. And I do recommend that you print off the report just so that you have a reference of the fact that you did make this change, especially if there are side effects later that you don't notice until down the road and you suddenly realize that you replaced something in the middle of a word or something completely wrong and you don't notice it until later. If you can go back and see which records were actually affected, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to make the corrections that were necessary. So I'll go to the name tool, or the pretend append tool. I'll just briefly discuss. You can pick a single field from either the global field or the CIC field, base table field, not both, and say what text you want to insert and whether it's going to occur before or after the existing text. That's pretty self-explanatory, but I can say org level 1, insert the text, howdy, before the existing text. So you can see it's done both things. It's got childcare and it's put howdy in front of org level 1. I can also do, I'll do a quick clear field demonstration here, where I can say erase the field org level 2. You do have to verify that you really mean to do this, because it is going to erase all the content in the field and it cannot be undone. So you can see that I have erased. This used to have an org level 1 and now it doesn't. I'm going to go all the way back to my original search results so we can see all the things that I've too late. I want to get back to my original M search results. There we go. So you can remove text from any given field, but it does erase the entire thing, so just please be careful. And finally, I'm going to do the, I'll do the checklist tool really quickly because we're really running out of time here. You can add or remove a checklist from a group of records. If you add a checklist, you have the ability to add some notes. If you are replacing a checklist, so if I want to replace partially accessible with fully accessible, you cannot do anything to the notes because you are changing an existing value for a new value. It would leave whatever you had in the notes intact. If you are removing it, so if I'm just going to look for delete unknown and not replace it with anything, again, I can't do anything with the notes because it's going to remove the entire value. And not all checklists have notes, so in the case of service level, there's no case under which you can provide notes for service level, so that would never be an option. Finally, the name tool. You can add to either the alternate or former organization name. You can look for a particular value to replace, or you can just do an addition. If I do former org, I also have the ability to provide a date of the change. So I can say name, and that was changed in 2007. And now within each of these, you can see I have the former name has been inserted. So if you have a record where the parent organization has a massive name change and you want to add the former name to a group of records at once, you can do that. Okay, I'm already over time. Does anyone have any find and replace questions? Okay. I'm going to spend 2 seconds on the web statistics, and then I actually have to go because we're overdue for another call. Again, the password to access this information was provided directly to the primary database contact. So if you do not have your username and password to access your website statistics, you need to contact your primary database contact. If you don't know who they are, then you can post or email Laura, and she would tell you who we have listed as your primary database contact. Website statistics give you some information that's very different from what you would get from just your record view statistics. Each of you will have access to your own website statistics, and this will give you traffic patterns, who is accessing your information, when, how much data transfer is happening, what times of day it's occurring, an approximate count of where, or approximate idea of where people are connecting from. It will also identify to you search engine traffic and spiders that are crawling your site, how long people are staying to visit your site, so 1 hour plus. Within the month of November, 551 people were visiting for more than an hour. This is approximate, so it's just based on continuous visits through the site, so it doesn't count when someone leaves and comes back, or doesn't do anything for a while and then does more. But it just gives you an approximate sense of the length of visits and what kinds of files are being accessed, what pages are most popular on your site, what operating systems people are using, what browsers they're using, which search engines they're using to find you, and other websites that are linking to you, the top search phrases that are used from search engines. So this is not the search phrases used within CIOC, but rather the search phrases that people are using in Google or Yahoo or somewhere else. Okay, and
links from other websites.
Yep, and finally there's a section on status code. Some of this information is mainly reviewed by Chris and I to look for things like software errors during or after a software upgrade. But the 404 is potentially something that you want to look at. The 404 tells you when someone has been trying to access a file on your website that doesn't exist. And that may mean that you have a bad link into your site and you want to contact the person who is linking that and it's a problem, so that you can have accurate links to your site. And it may also tell you where you have, say, linked a bad style sheet in one of your pages and it isn't properly loading that style sheet. It gives you all kinds of information like that. The one you can safely ignore is if you get a robots.txt. That's simply a search engine looking for instructions on how to crawl your site. Okay. Right now I'm looking at a particular month, the month of November. It's going to default to the current month, but you can look at other specific months, or you can look at it on a yearly basis. Okay? Does anyone have any very basic questions about your web server logs? This doesn't break down by module. Currently this covers your entire site. It is certainly possible for us to do some enhancements to only show based on volunteer specific pages and community information specific pages. But making this available to you was funded by CIOC, and this is what they have initially funded to make available to you. And anything else that we do will have to happen in the future as sort of an enhancement, if you will.
I have one comment to make about the GeoIP city data that we have here. The data that we're using for this to get this information is not paid for and is therefore not 100% accurate. So take whatever information you get there with a grain of salt. For instance, I was able to see that the stats here think that our IP is in St. Catharines, which obviously we are in Burlington and not St. Catharines. But if I go onto their site and see what my IP address translates to with the paid version of this data, it shows up as Oakville,
which is much more accurate than St. Catharines. So use it as a sense, but it is not, because we are using the free service to determine where people are originating from, it's far more out of date than what is available with the paid service. Okay. Last chance to ask questions, and then and we have to zip off. Okay. Thanks very much. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we have a complete recording of this session. We had a failure of the recording partway through. Whatever we manage to retrieve, we will make available for review. And if you have any questions after the session on what we covered today, just post on the bulletin board. Thanks.